The night felt darker than usual as my fiancé and I stepped onto the trail. It wasn't just the absence of light. It was the way the darkness refused to move. Even with our flashlights on, the beams didn't seem to travel far, as if the air itself was thicker than normal. The scent of wet soil was strong, and the ground, still soaked from the afternoon rain, softened under every step. The forest, normally full of insects, birds, and wind, was completely silent. Not a single branch creaked. Not a single leaf rustled. It was the kind of silence that makes you too aware of your own breathing, too aware of your heartbeat. The trees formed dark walls around us, and the humidity clung to my skin. We'd walked that trail countless times, but something about that night felt heavier, quieter, like the forest was watching us move. We kept going, talking softly, until we reached a long curve where the vegetation grew closer to the path. That's where I saw her. She was standing right beside the trail, almost blending into the shadows, her shoulders slumped and her hands covering her face. I only realized she was crying when we got close enough to hear it. It was a soft, muffled sound, controlled, restrained, like she didn't want anyone to know she was there. Her clothes were a little dirty at the edges, and the subtle shaking of her shoulders made my stomach tighten. There was no gear with her, no phone in her hand, no signal that she wanted help. Just a quiet, exhausted kind of crying that didn't belong in a place so isolated. Before I could say anything, I noticed movement a little farther down the trail. A man. He was pushing a stroller along the path, and it immediately struck me as wrong. That part of the forest is full of rocks, uneven ground, exposed roots. It's absolutely not a place where anyone would bring a stroller. He pushed it slowly, forcing the wheels over the rough ground, and each jolt made the metal frame rattle. He didn't look at her. He didn't look at us. He didn't look anywhere except straight ahead, as if he were following a route only he could see. The woman didn't react to him either. It was unnerving, two people sharing the same space with no awareness of each other. We kept moving, trying not to stare, but the atmosphere shifted the moment we walked past them. The forest felt more closed in, like the path had narrowed without actually changing. My skin prickled, and I kept glancing back even though I didn't want to. It felt like the air had changed somehow, though I couldn't explain why. I tried brushing it off as just a strange encounter, but my body didn't believe that. Something was off. When we returned later that night, everything felt wrong. The woman was still there, in the same exact spot, but her cry sounded weaker, like it had been going on for hours. The man was there too, almost in the same position on the trail, and that alone made my pulse pick up. No one stays in that area for long, much less two people who look like that. He was still pushing the stroller, but only a short distance back and forth, like he was moving inside a small loop. That was when I finally looked inside it. The stroller was empty. Completely empty. No baby, no blanket, no belongings, nothing but the dark interior. My stomach dropped. The idea of someone wandering a forest trail with an empty stroller for hours made every instinct in me tense. I whispered to my fiancé that there was nothing inside. I thought I was being quiet, but in a place that's silent, whispers traveled. My fiancé glanced back, just for a second, and his posture changed instantly. He breathed out in a sharp, nervous way and murmured that the man had stopped walking. And he was staring straight at us. I froze. I didn't need to turn around. I felt a tension in the air behind me, a pressure that wrapped itself around my spine like a warning. Then I heard the footsteps. 1, 2, 3, slow at first, then gradually sinking with our pace. He was following us. The beam of my flashlight shook in my hands as the trail darkened ahead. The footsteps stayed steady, never rushing, never falling behind. Just following, matching, observing. Every turn in the trail gave me a second of hope that we had lost him, until the footsteps began again. His presence felt deliberate, like he wanted us to know he was there, and that he wasn't going away. We reached the same spot where the woman had been. This time, she wasn't crying. She wasn't moving at all. Her posture hadn't changed, but the stillness around her didn't feel alive anymore. The stroller that should have been near the man was gone. Completely gone. The ground where the wheels had been minutes earlier looked disturbed, like something had been dragged off the trail. The footsteps behind us sounded heavier now, more certain. The rhythm changed the moment we tried to speed up. A cold wave spread through my chest. This wasn't an innocent situation. This wasn't someone unaware of us. He was chasing us. We didn't decide to run, we just did. Our bodies reacted before our minds could catch up. The trail felt impossible to navigate at that speed. My feet kept slipping on wet soil, and the shadows made it hard to avoid the roots and rocks. I could hear the man behind us, his steps growing louder, not running, but walking fast enough to keep the pressure right behind us. Every sound echoed. Branches snapping, dirt shifting. my own breathing turning ragged. It felt like the trail stretched longer than usual, twisting itself into something unfamiliar. I honestly thought we wouldn't reach the end before he caught up. But then, through the darkness, we saw silhouettes, another group of hikers standing at the fork ahead. The moment we reached them, everything behind us went silent. I turned around, expecting to see the man pause, or hide, or stare from a distance. But there was nothing. No figure between the trees. No movement. No sound of footsteps trailing off. He had disappeared completely, as if he had never been there in the first place. We finished the walk in silence, not out of fear of being heard, but because we had no explanation. Nothing about what happened fit into anything normal. Even inside the car, with the doors locked, the uneasiness followed me like a shadow. Something had happened out there that we weren't meant to see, and the worst part started later. Over the next few weeks, on different trails in the same park, I began finding baby clothes on the ground. Tiny socks, little hats, onesies folded neatly on rocks or tucked under low branches. Clean, dry, recently placed. Never torn or dirty, never looking like they had been lost by accident. They always looked arranged. And every time I found one, that same cold feeling from that night crept back up my spine. I don't know who's putting those things out there. I don't know if it's connected to that man, but something is repeating itself along those trails. Something that doesn't end when you leave the forest. And it feels like whatever we saw that night wasn't meant to stay in the dark. A few years ago, I was hiking a quiet trail in an area I knew well. It was an easy walk, short and relaxing, something I'd done many times before. Not long after I started, I noticed a man walking behind me. Nothing strange at first. Trails like that always have people coming and going. But after a few minutes, I realized he was keeping the exact same pace as me. Every step I took, he matched it. It started to bother me. I don't like the feeling of someone right on my back, especially in the woods. So I slowed down, stopped, and waited for him to pass. He stopped too. No hesitation. He pulled a bottle from his pack, took a drink, like he just happened to pause at the same exact moment. I waited a little longer, then continued walking, and so did he. At a rest stop, I took a break for about 10 minutes. More than enough time for him to go ahead. But he stayed behind. From a distance, I noticed he looked dirty. His clothes worn, and he carried a bag way too big for such a simple trail. When I left the lookout, he left too. By this point, it wasn't just annoying, it was alarming. There were very few people on the trail that day, which made everything feel worse. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was afraid of wildlife. Maybe he was doing a longer route, but the uneasy feeling just wouldn't go away. I picked up my pace, hoping to reach the end of the trail where more people usually gathered after a long, quiet stretch. I looked back and realized he was no longer there. Relief washed over me. I finally relaxed. I reached the end, enjoyed the view for a good 15 minutes, and started heading back alone. About 15 minutes into the return walk, I saw him again. This time, he was off the trail, standing between the trees, holding a hatchet. My whole body froze. He stared at me, then slowly stepped back onto the path. As if nothing was wrong, I unclipped my bear spray, ready to use it at the slightest movement. He said, "It's okay. You can come by. I'll step off the trail so you can pass." I know my bag is really big. Such a strange thing to say, as if the bag was the problem. He stepped aside again, slowly giving me space. I walked past him quickly, my heart pounding, trying not to show the panic clawing up my throat. When I looked back, he was standing still, watching me, and he gave a small nod. I didn't stop walking. Not once. When I got close to the end of the trail, I saw 2 rangers running full speed toward me. They shouted, "Have you seen a man with a really big bag?" I answered instantly, yes. He was farther back on the trail. They sprinted past me without another word. I never found out if they caught him. Never learned why they were looking for him. And honestly, I don't want to know. All I know is that, even though he never touched me, that day I felt real fear, the kind that doesn't fade, the kind that stays in your body long after it's over. And that trail, the one I used to love, never felt the same again. I was walking through a forest near my home, the kind of place where I usually take short afternoon hikes, but that day, I decided to take the longer route, the one with thicker woods and barely any foot traffic. Never felt safe enough to try it alone. But something in me wanted to test myself, push a little farther, see how I handled it. At first, everything felt normal. The damp smell of leaves, the narrow path, the heavy stillness in the air. Then I saw lights. They looked like flashlights in the distance, but weaker, just small patches of glow appearing between the trees. I couldn't see who was holding them, only the light itself landing here and there on the ground, a faint flash. Then another, moving slowly as if someone was walking ahead of me, but the lights kept turning on and off, and every time they turned off, they came back on closer, and closer. Whenever I tried to focus on the exact spot, the light vanished, and when it reappeared, it was somewhere completely different, never close enough to see a person. Just the glow sliding between the trees, like something testing my attention. Then suddenly, nothing. No more lights, just darkness settling in heavier than before. I kept walking, trying to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. That's when the footsteps started. At first, they matched my pace, faint, steady, repeating like an echo of my own movements. Then they grew closer. Then too close, close enough that I should have been able to see someone if I turned around, and the sound wasn't just footsteps. It was weight. It sounded like something heavy moving through the woods, not walking, advancing. Each step hit the ground with violent force, snapping branches so loudly it felt like the forest was breaking apart around me. The twigs didn't just crack. They exploded under its weight, sharp snap crunch sounds echoing far too close, like bones being crushed under a boot. And the worst part wasn't the volume, it was the speed. Those steps weren't slow or hesitant, they were deliberate, closing the distance with a steady, brutal rhythm that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It was the kind of sound that tells you, without any doubt, whatever is behind you is big enough, strong enough to reach you, and isn't trying to hide it. It felt like the footsteps were brushing the edge of my shadow. But when I turned the light, there was nothing. No figure, no movement, just the echo of shattered twigs settling into the dirt. That was the moment I ran. I didn't think. My body just moved. My lantern shook in my hand, barely lighting the path in front of me, and the footsteps followed, matching my speed, closing in. Whenever I slowed down even for a second, only when I reached the open part of the trail did the footsteps stop instantly, like someone had flicked them off with a switch. I don't know who or what was out there with me. All I know is I've never taken that long route again.